Kale floated in the zero-gravity chamber of the Grand Archive. His long, delicate fingers brushed over a glowing data crystal. It was old, very old. The symbols on its case were not used anymore. They were from the time of the Elders, the first ones to sail the stars. The Elders were gone now, but their warnings were still kept here. Most were ignored. Kale was a historian for the Veltari Concord. His people were peaceful. They loved order and rules. They believed every species deserved a place in the galactic consensus. But Kale was young. He thought the old ways were too careful. He thought they were afraid of shadows. This crystal was marked with a red symbol. It meant highest danger. The label said, Subject, Soul System, Species, Terra, Human. The main instruction was simple, do not disturb. Kale opened the file. A hologram appeared. It showed a blue and green planet. The images were of cities, wars, forests, and oceans. The data said the humans were divided into many nations. They fought each other often. They were still using basic chemical rockets. They had not even reached their nearest stars. The Elder's voice, translated, was soft but serious. This species carries a unique danger. They are not like the others. They are apex predators by nature, but their true threat is in their minds. They are a latent singularity. A single, unified threat can make them become one mind, one will. They will not stop. They will adapt to any challenge. They will turn peace into a weapon. Leave them to sleep. Do not awaken them. Kale closed the file. He felt disappointed. This was the great danger? A loud, messy species stuck on one planet? The Elders were clearly wrong. They were afraid of a creature that just happened to be at the top of its food chain long ago. The galaxy was full of such stories. He looked at the current reports from the observation posts near Sol. The humans were arguing over small pieces of land. They were polluting their own world. Their biggest achievement was a small base on their moon. It was pathetic. A plan formed in Kale's mind. If he could make first contact correctly, he would be famous. He would prove the Elders wrong. He would show the Concord that even a wild species could be brought into the light of cooperation. He would be a hero. He would not ask for permission. The council would say no. They would quote the old warning. So he would go alone. A small, quiet scout ship, just to observe, to see the truth with his own eyes. Far away, on the dusty surface of Earth's moon, a person in a bulky white suit moved slowly. Her name was Sumin. She was a geologist. Her job was to collect rock samples. It was quiet, hard work. Inside the lunar station Celine, her friend Jihan watched the systems. He was an engineer. He made sure the air was clean, the power was on, and the communication to Earth worked. Found anything good today? Jihan's voice crackled in Sumin's helmet. More of the same gray dust, Sumin said, picking up a small rock. It's all gray. I miss green. I miss the smell of rain. You just miss your mom's cooking. Jihan laughed. True. Sumin smiled. I would kill for a bowl of kimchi jjigae right now. They talked about small things. About the new movie everyone was watching on Earth. About the sports team that was losing. About their families. It was a normal day. A quiet day on the edge of human space. Back on Earth, in a busy office, a woman named Hygiene was tired. She was a translator. She had spent all day helping politicians from different countries understand each other. They argued about money, about borders, about history. Felt like no one really listened. It was frustrating. In orbit around Earth, Commander Tae-suk of the patrol ship Vigil scanned the endless dark. His job was to watch for space debris, for asteroids that might come too close. It was mostly boring. The world below was beautiful, but from here you could not see the conflicts. You just saw a fragile blue ball. None of them knew about Kale. None of them knew about the Grand Archive or the Veltari Concord. They did not know about the warning. They were just people, living their lives, working, hoping, and sometimes arguing. They were not a singular mind. They were billions of individual stories. But Kale, looking at his screens, saw only data. He saw conflict and primitive technology. He did not see Sumin missing her mother's food. He did not see Jihan's care for his machines. He did not see Hygiene's hope for understanding or Taesuk's quiet watch over the planet. He saw a puzzle that was already solved. He saw a test he was sure he could pass. He finished his preparations. His small ship was ready. It was quiet and had tools to watch without being seen. He set the coordinates for the Sol system. He felt a thrill. He was going to make history. He was going to show the galaxy that the oldest fear was just a silly story. He activated the drive. The stars outside the window blurred. He was on his way. He was going to poke the beehive, fully believing there were no bees inside, only harmless flies. Kale's ship slipped into the Sol system like a shadow. His technology was far beyond anything the humans had. His scanners painted a detailed picture of the third planet. He saw the energy signatures of their cities. He listened to their thousands of broadcasts. The data flooded his screens. It was just as he thought. The signals were chaotic. They were full of music, drama, news of arguments between nations, and shows about cooking and love. They were so noisy. They were not unified. They were 100 different voices all shouting at once. He focused on their space assets. A few old satellites around their planet. A small, wheel-shaped station in low orbit. And, on the moon, a tiny cluster of habitats. The Selene station. It was unimpressive. The ships he saw were simple, built for short trips. Nothing that could threaten the Concorde. He needed a test. A small one. Just to see how they would react to a minor, unexplained event. It would prove their lack of coordination. He targeted a single communications satellite. It was old, floating in a high orbit. To Kale, it was a piece of junk. He fired a very low-powered energy pulse. It was not a weapon. It was like a gentle tap. The pulse washed over the satellite. The satellite's electronics sparked and died. It went dark, tumbling silently out of its orbit on the moon. An alarm beeped softly. Jihan looked up from his maintenance report. A screen showed the status of Earth-orbiting assets. One symbol had just turned from green to red. "Weird," he muttered. "Satellite KU-77 just went offline. Total failure." Sumin was back inside, taking off her suit. Probably just old. It was due for replacement. "Yeah," Jihan said, but he opened another screen. He sent a diagnostic request. There was no response. The satellite was just gone. He checked the last data burst. It showed a massive sudden power surge right before it died. That was not normal for an old part failing. That looked like an impact. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. He called Earth.in the Orbital Patrol Center. Commander Taesuk was drinking coffee. The alert from the Selene station appeared on his main screen. A satellite had gone dark. The system suggested a micrometeorite impact. But the computer also flagged the energy signature as anomalous. Taesuk put his cup down. He pulled up the sensor logs from his own ship, the Vigil, and from 2 other observation posts. They all showed the same thing. Tiny, bright flash of energy. Not a kinetic impact. An energy discharge. His training took over. An unexplained energy event in orbit. Could be a test by another nation. A secret weapon. His first duty was to protect the space assets. He went to high alert. The quiet hum of the Vigil changed. Lights brightened. His crew snapped to their stations. "Report this to all sector commands," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Pattern is not consistent with natural debris. Source unknown. Initiating defensive scan." On Earth, Hygiene was at home, finally asleep. Her phone rang and rang. She groaned and answered it. It was her boss at the UN Extraterrestrial Affairs Office. There was no such thing as extraterrestrial affairs, really. It was a fancy title for a group that watched for space debris and coordinated satellite launches. "You need to come in. Now," her boss said. His voice was tight. "What is it?" Hygiene asked, already getting out of bed. "We don't know. Something happened in high orbit. The Americans think it might be a Russian test. The Russians think it might be an American accident. The Europeans are asking for data. No one has any. Everyone is confused. We need translators in the Situation Room." Now. Hygiene dressed quickly. Her mind raced. An accident? A test? As her car sped through the empty streets, she looked up at the night sky. It looked the same as always. Kale watched the reaction. His screens showed the human networks lighting up. First, it was just confusion. Then, the military channels he had cracked started to buzz. Ships were moving. Messages were flying between countries. But it was not the chaos he expected. He saw data packets being shared. The Americans were sending their sensor logs to the Chinese. The Russians were asking the Japanese for confirmation. The separate, arguing nations were suddenly talking. They were not accusing each other. They were comparing notes. The fragmented picture he had seen was starting to merge. The 100 voices were not shouting different things anymore. They were all asking the same question. What was that? A chill ran through Kale's body. This was not the reaction of a divided, primitive species. This was the reaction of an organism that felt a pinch. And every part of it was turning to look at the source of the pain. He had wanted a small test. He had wanted to see disorganization. Instead, he saw the first flicker of unity. He saw suspicion, yes, but it was a cold, sharp, and shared suspicion. He made a decision. This was not going according to plan. He needed to leave. But first, he needed to cover his tracks. He could not let them find any trace of his ship. He aimed a more precise, targeted pulse at the lunar station Selene. He would erase their recent sensor logs, the ones that might have caught the edge of his energy signature. Just a quick, clean wipe. Then he would slip away, and no one would be the wiser. He fired the pulse. It was a precise beam of data-scrambling energy, invisible to the human eye. It shot toward the moon. On the Selene, every screen flickered for half a second. Ji-hun stared at his console. The raw data files from the last hour, the files showing the strange energy spike, corrupted and vanished, replaced with static. No, he whispered. Then he said it louder. No, that's not a failure. That's an attack. He turned to zoom in, his face pale. Someone just hacked us. No, not hacked. They just deleted the evidence. From space. The quiet, normal day was over. The beehive had been poked. And now, deep in its heart, a low, dangerous hum had begun. The silence in the lunar station was heavy. Ji-hun's words hung in the air. An attack. Sumin moved to his side, looking at the blank data screen. The static seemed louder than any alarm. Are you sure? She asked, her voice low. The satellite goes dark from an energy burst. Then, exactly the data we'd used to study, that burst gets erased by another energy burst. From a different direction. He pulled up a star map. 2 lines appeared, both traced from their sensors before they were wiped. The lines did not come from Earth. They came from empty space, beyond the moon. They converged on a single point, a spot now moving away. That's not a coincidence. That's a visitor. And they don't want to be seen. Ji-hun sent the star map, the corrupted data files, and his analysis to Earth. The message was marked with the highest priority code. On Earth, the situation room was a storm of low voices and bright screens. Hygiene was translating in real time, but the usual political tension was gone. The American general was speaking directly to the Russian liaison. The Chinese scientist was sharing algorithms with the Indian technician. The shared data from the moon had changed everything. A man named Dae-hyun was called in. He was a software analyst. His job was to find ghosts in the machine, hidden codes, patterns, and noise. He was given the corrupted data from the Selene. He was a quiet man, used to working alone in a small office. Now, everyone was watching him. He didn't look at the corrupted files. He looked at what was around them. He examined the system logs of the Selene's computer in the seconds before and after the erasure. He saw the tiny surge in power. He saw the specific memory blocks that were targeted. This was not a virus. It was not a hack. It was like someone had reached in with a magnet and selectively wiped a single page from a notebook. This was external, Dae-hyun said, his first words to the room. A directed energy pulse. Very advanced. It was not meant to destroy. It was meant to hide. He pointed to the star map from Ji-hun. They are here, and they are watching us. They killed our satellite as a test. When we started to look, they tried to clean up. The room was silent. The idea of an accident or a secret test by a rival nation evaporated. This was something else. Something from outside. Commander Taesuk's voice came through the speaker from the vigil. We are tracking the projected origin point. It is moving on a parabolic course out of the system. Speed is increasing. They are leaving. Can we stop them? The American general asked. No, Taesuk said flatly. Their technology is too far ahead. They are already moving faster than anything we have. We can only watch them go. A feeling of deep vulnerability filled the room. They had been examined, tested, and damaged by something they could not touch or chase. Then the Russian liaison spoke, through Hygiene's translation. They think we are simple. They think we will not understand what we saw. This was an experiment. We were the lab animals. The American general nodded slowly. Then let's show them we understood the lesson. Kale was fleeing. His ship raced for the system's edge, where he could safely jump to faster-than-light travel. His hearts were pounding. The plan was a disaster. They had not panicked. They had investigated. And they had done it together quickly. The second pulse, meant to hide his mistake, had only confirmed his presence. It was like poking a creature, seeing it flinch, and then poking it again to see if it was still looking. A stupid, arrogant move. He watched the human networks on his screen. The change was now visible even to him. The chaotic chatter was coalescing. The separate military feeds were merging into unified channels. He saw orders being given not by individual nations, but by a new, combined command. The label on the data stream was simple. Project Gellerhorn. He didn't know what the word meant, but he saw its output. Theoretical research on faster-than-light travel, which had been scattered and underfunded, was now a top priority. Designs for new ships, powered by theories the humans had only just dreamed of, were being drafted in coordinated teams across the planet. Research into energy weapons, force fields, advanced materials, all of it was being pulled from academic papers and secret labs and put onto shared servers. They were not building a weapon. They were building a toolbox. And they were doing it with a single-minded focus that chilled him. The divisions were gone. The arguments were silenced. The 100 voices had become one voice, and it was asking one question. How do we make sure this never happens again? He had provided the answer. By being a threat. By being an outsider. He had given them a common enemy, and in doing so, he had unified them in a way they had never unified themselves. The elder's warning echoed in his mind. A latent singularity, a single point of infinite density. He thought it was a metaphor. Now he saw it was a description. The human species, under pressure, was collapsing in on itself. Not to be destroyed, but to form something new, dense, and powerful. They were becoming one will. His console chimed. A new signal was being broadcast from Earth on every frequency, in every direction. It was not complex. It was a simple radio wave shout, loud and clear. It was a recording, repeating. He listened. The voice was calm, female. It was Hygiene's voice. Identify yourself. Explain your actions. No greeting. No request for friendship. No welcome to the galaxy. Just a demand for accountability. The tone was not fearful. It was cold. It was the voice of a parent who has found a child doing something dangerous and foolish. It was the voice of judgment. Kale stared at the communication panel. He had never received a first contact message like this. It held no awe. It held no curiosity. It held only a promise. We see you. Now answer. In that moment, Kale finally understood the truth he had disregarded. He had not contacted a younger brother species. He had not woken a sleeping giant. He had pulled the pin on a grenade and was now watching the lever slowly start to fly off. And he had no idea what the explosion would look like. Panic was a cold, tight feeling in Kale's chest. The human signal, that simple, repeating demand, felt like a searchlight sweeping the dark. They knew he was here. They were talking to him, not with wonder, but with the tone of a guard challenging an intruder he could not answer. What would he say? Hello, I am Kale. I broke an ancient law to prove a point and accidentally showed you that you are not alone in a terrifying universe. My apologies. It was unthinkable. He had to warn the Concord. They needed to know what he had done. They needed to know the edict was not a superstition. It was an instruction manual for survival. With shaking hands, he prepared a data burst. He included everything: his sensor logs of Earth, the records of the satellite pulse and the data erasure, the human reaction, their sudden global unification. And finally, he attached the complete, unredacted Terran edict file. He had cracked the final encryption in his sphere. He sent it all in one desperate stream of information towards home. Then he turned his ship to face the distant, shrinking blue dot of Earth. He waited. He listened. On Earth, the silence was louder than any noise. The demand for identification had been sent. There was no immediate reply. In the situation rooms, now linked across continents, people watched the screens. They tracked the faint signal of Kale's ship, a speck fleeing towards the edge of their solar system. The data from Daehyun's analysis was shared with everyone. The proof was undeniable. An alien intelligence had trespassed, damaged property, and tried to hide. The mood was not of excitement, but of grim resolve. The childhood dream of friendly visitors was dead. In its place was the adult reality of a stranger throwing a rock through your window in the night. Project Gyllerhorn was no longer a project. It was a new reality. Engineers who had worked for competing companies now shared blueprints. Scientists who had hoarded research for national glory published everything to open servers. The focus was razor-sharp: defense, understanding, and eventually, reach. Commander Tae-suk, aboard the Vigil, oversaw the first tangible result. Using shared designs from American, Russian, and Chinese labs, a team had modified an old cargo tug. They fitted it with a prototype engine based on theories the alien pulse had helped confirm. It was a test to see if they could create a similar energy signature. In a silent hangar on the dark side of the space station, the engine fired for 1 second. It worked. It was a small, clumsy copy of a technology they did not fully understand, but they had built it in weeks. Tae-suk looked at the data. "We can follow," he said to the room on Earth. "Not today, not this time, but soon. They have shown us the first step. We will walk the path." Kale's data burst reached the Veltari Concord. It exploded into their peaceful network like a shockwave. The Council of Elders, not ancient but the current leaders, was called into emergency session. They watched Kale's logs. They saw the human world, fragmented and loud. They saw the first pulse. Then they saw the change. They saw the separate colors of nations blur into a single, solid shade of determination. They saw the birth of Project Gyllerhorn. Finally, they opened the full Elder's Edict. The ancient warning was now clear. The redacted section held the reason. Assessment of Terran psychology indicates a unique survival paradigm. They possess an innate total war protocol. When faced with an existential threat, social and political structures do not break. They simplify. Individualism is temporarily suppressed in favor of a hive-like focus on collective survival. Their innovation rate increases exponentially under direct threat. They do not seek to match a threat. They seek to understand, dismantle, and repurpose it. The triggering mechanism for this state is the confirmed presence of a superior, hostile, external intelligence. Once activated, the state is permanent. They will not return to passive competition. They will now seek to ensure no external threat can ever exist again. They will become the threat. Do not disturb. The council chamber was silent. The elders of old had not feared human weapons. They had feared human unity. They had feared the moment when the many became 1.1 of the current elders. A venerable Veltari named Alara spoke softly. Kale did not just wake them up. He inoculated them. He gave them their first common enemy. He proved their deepest, most paranoid fears true. And in doing so, he unlocked their most dangerous trait. Another elder looked at the final images from the data burst. The repeating human signal. Identify yourself. Explain your actions. They are not asking for friendship, the elder said. They are building a case. They are gathering evidence. For what? For the day they come to deliver the verdict, Alara finished. The decision was swift. Kale was to be recalled and stripped of all standing. A formal diplomatic mission, full of apology and offering of peaceful technology, would be sent to Seoul immediately. They had to try to calm the waters, to offer a path to peaceful membership, to try and make the humans see them as friends before the total war protocol became irreversible. But as they prepared the orders, a new signal arrived from the observation post near Seoul. It was a visual scan. The humans were not just working on engines. They were building new frames in orbit. Skeletal, angular ships that had no purpose for peaceful exploration. They were building warships. And the design principles were already leaps ahead of what they should have known. The offer of technology was useless. The humans were not asking for gifts. They were taking lessons from the attack. They were reverse engineering the event itself. The Council's message of peace would arrive to a species that had already moved past the need for it. The door was closing, and Kale had been the one to push it shut. The Veltari Concorde's diplomatic ship was a thing of beauty. It was smooth and shining, shaped like a gentle teardrop, carried messages of peace and offers of knowledge. It moved slowly into the Sol system, its signals full of friendly greetings. It was met just past the orbit of Mars. Not by a human ship, but by a wall of silent, floating platforms. They were simple things, little more than frames holding engines and weapons. They were blocky and sharp, built in orbital factories that had worked day and night. They did not look advanced. They looked functional. And there were hundreds of them. A signal came from the largest human structure, a new station called Sentinel-1. The voice was Hygiene's. It was calm and clear. Veltari vessel. This is human space. You are approaching a restricted system. Transmit your full intent and await permission to proceed. On the beautiful Veltari ship, the diplomats were shocked. This was not a welcome. This was a border checkpoint. They sent their peaceful intentions, their apologies for the unfortunate incident caused by a lone criminal, and their generous offer of technology and membership in the Galactic Consensus. The reply took hours. When it came, it was brief. The Concorde's apology is noted. Your offer of technology is declined. Your offer of membership is under consideration. Do not approach the orbit of Jupiter. A corridor for your exit will be provided. Do not deviate. They were not being invited in. They were being shown the door. The humans were not accepting gifts. They were setting rules. The diplomats argued, but the wall of platforms did not move. Their sensors told them the simple weapons on those platforms were powered and targeted. The humans were not bluffing. The Veltari ship turned and left, its mission a total failure. Kale stood before the Concorde Council. The great chamber was silent, all eyes on him. He was no longer a historian. He was an example. Ilara, the elder, spoke. You were told the truth. You disregarded it. You saw a law and thought it was a suggestion. You saw a warning and thought it was a myth. Your arrogance has cost the galaxy its peace. A species that slept, divided and harmless, now stands united and armed. They are learning from the violence you showed them. They are becoming what we feared. Kale had no defense. He looked at the floor. What will they become? He whispered. We do not know, Ilara said. The elders warned they would not stop until no threat could ever reach them again. That is a path with no end. You have started them on that path. Your name will be remembered, Kale, not as an explorer, but as a warning. Dismissed. Kale left, his life in ruins. The ancient caution was now the galaxy's foremost law. Every child would learn his story as a lesson in fear. On the moon, Sumin and Ji-hun stood in an observation dome. Below them, Earth hung in the black sky. But it was different now. A ring of new construction glittered around it like a belt of diamonds. Shipyards, defense platforms, power stations. It looks like a fortress, Sumin said quietly. It is, Ji-hun replied. He pointed to a bright, moving dot. That's the Vanguard, our first deep space patrol ship. Its engine is based on the pulse that hit our satellite. Sumin shivered. It's all happening so fast. They left us no choice, Ji-hun said. His face was serious. They didn't come to say hello. They came to test us. like an animal in a cage. We can't be in that cage again. He looked at her. Do you miss the before? The quiet days? Sumin thought of the gray dust, the jokes about food, the simple work. I miss being small, she said finally. I miss when the sky was just stars, and not a place someone could watch us from. But you can't go back after you know. They watched in silence as the vanguard moved across the stars. A sentinel for a world that no longer slept at IN, the command center of Sentinel-1. Commander Taesuk looked at a screen. It showed the empty space where the Veltari ship had been. Another screen showed the live feed from the Vanguard's first test of its new thrusters. They worked perfectly. Hygiene stood beside him, a data pad in her hand. The Unified Council has ratified the new principles, she said. We accept no technology. We make no alliances. We define our own borders. We learn on our own terms.
Taeseok nodded.
He looked at the main viewport at the endless dark. They think they scared us, he said, his voice low and steady. They did, but they made a mistake. They scared all of us. Together. Now we are not afraid of the dark anymore. He turned to a control panel. A global countdown was displayed. It was for the launch of the first true interstellar ship, built with human-engineered faster-than-light drive. Now we are afraid of being weak, and we will never be weak again. He placed his hand on the console. The quiet hum of the station felt different now. It was not the hum of machines. It was the hum of a single, focused will. A will that had been awakened. The galaxy had told them to stay quiet. It had warned them not to wake up. But someone had knocked on their door in the night. And now humanity was awake. They had put on their armor. They had learned the first lesson of the stars. That silence is not peace. It is just the quiet before a choice. And humanity had made its choice. They would not wait for the next knock. They would go out and see who else was there. Not with open hands, but with clear eyes and a promise they had learned from their visitor. We see you. The story of a friendly universe was over. A new story was beginning. And the first page was written in the language of a simple, unforgiving demand. Explain your actions. 5 years is a short time for the galaxy. It is a long time for a species that has found a purpose. The Veltari Concord watched the Sol system. Their observation posts, hidden and far away, sent back data. They saw no great fleets pouring out. They saw no invasion. They saw only a patient, relentless industry. The human ring around Earth, once a scattering of new construction, was now a solid band of metal and light. Shipyards the size of moons turned out vessels. They were not elegant. They had no smooth curves. They were geometric, armored, and functional. They looked like floating fortresses. Inside the Sentinel-1 station, Commander Taesuk reviewed the latest reports. The first human-built faster-than-light drive, nicknamed the Step, was ready. It was not a copy of Veltari technology. It was something else. The Veltari drive folded space gently. The human drive punched a hole through it. It was louder, less efficient, and left a unique energy scar. It was, in every way, a human solution, brute force applied to a complex problem. The Odyssey is prepared, his second-in-command said. The Odyssey was their first true interstellar ship. Taesuk nodded. Objective. The initial target is the Proxima Centauri system. Survey and assessment. No contact. If we find nothing, we move to the next star. And the next. And if we find someone? The officer asked. Taesuk looked at the screen, showing the dark starfield. We observe. We learn. We do not test. We do not provoke. We just make sure they know the neighborhood has changed. The order was clear. No repeats of Kale's mistake. Their presence would be announced, not hidden. Their power would be visible, not secret. On the moon, Sumin no longer collected rocks. She worked in a vast underground lab studying xenomaterials. They had no alien samples. So they studied the after-effects of the energy pulses from 5 years ago, the faint scars left on space itself. They were learning the grammar of a language they had only heard once. Ji-hun was on the Odyssey, running final checks on the step drive. He thought about the quiet days in the Selene station. He missed them sometimes, but he knew they were a fantasy now. The universe had rules. They had learned the first one: be strong, or be a test subject in a quiet corner of the Concord archives. Cale worked as a lowly clerk. His punishment was to preserve the very history he had ignored. He read the reports from the observation posts. He saw the human ships. He saw their drive tests. Each test was a confirmation of his failure. One day, Elder Alara visited him. She looked older. "The humans are launching their first ship beyond their system today," she said. Cale did not look up. "I know. They are not coming for revenge, it seems," Alara said. "They are just expanding, system by system." "That is worse," Cale said quietly. "Revenge has an end. This does not. They are not building an empire. They are building a fence. And each new star is another post in that fence. They will keep building it until it surrounds everything, until they feel safe." He finally looked at her. "They will never feel safe. Not after what I did. So they will never stop." Alara had no answer. She left him in the silent archive, surrounded by the ghosts of the Elder's warnings. The Odyssey sat at the edge of the Sol system. On its bridge, Jihun gave the final readings. Step drive is charged. Coordinates locked. All systems are green. From Sentinel-1, Taesuk's face was on the screen. "You have your orders. Walk softly, but make sure they hear your footsteps." In the crew lounge, Hygiene watched on a monitor. She was not on the ship. Her work was now here, crafting the messages they might one day send. Messages that were not demands but statements. Simple facts. "We are here. This is ours. You are there. That is yours." It was not diplomacy. It was cartography. The countdown finished. The Odyssey's step drive activated. It did not shimmer. It did not glide. Space in front of the ship tore open with a silent, violent flash of distorted light. The ship pushed into the rupture and was gone. The scar it left behind glowed for a few seconds, an angry mark on the fabric of reality, before fading. It was not a graceful exit. It was a declaration. The signal from the event reached the Veltari observation posts minutes later. The analysts read the data. The energy signature was new, crude, and powerful. It was not a technology borrowed from the Concord. It was a technology born from a threat. The humans had taken the first punch thrown at them, studied its physics, and built a door out of it. The report was sent to the Concord Council. The heading was simple: Stage 2. Containment is no longer possible. The species is mobile. Across the galaxy, other species older and wiser than the Veltari received their own reports. They had also heeded the Elder's caution. They had left the blue world alone. Now they watched the new signal bloom on their maps. A new, sharp, and unforgiving signature. They had all hoped the humans would sleep forever. That hope was gone. Someone had disregarded the truth. And now the truth was awake. It was building fences. It was learning to step between the stars. And it had just taken its first, loud step into the dark. The story was not over. It had only just finished the introduction. The next page was blank, waiting in the silence between stars. And for the first time in 5 years, that silence did not feel empty. It felt watched. 10 years after the first pulse, the Proxima Centauri system was quiet. It had no planets that could support life. It was just rocks and dust and a dim red sun. The human ship Odyssey hung in the dark near a frozen world. Ji-hun, now chief engineer of the Odyssey, studied the scans. They had found nothing alive, but they had found something else. On a moon of the gas giant, there were ruins. Not cities, just a single, collapsed structure. It was made of a smooth material that refused to corrode. It was not Veltari. It was older. They landed a small team. Sumin was among them, her geological training now used for xenology. She ran her glove over a broken wall. It was cool and perfect. "It's a watchtower," she said over the radio to the ship. "Or a beacon." This pointed towards Sol, towards home. They found no bodies, no technology, just the empty building placed there to observe. Someone, long before the Veltari, had watched Earth. And then they had left or vanished. The feeling was not one of discovery, but of confirmation. They had always been watched. The data was sent back to Sentinel-1. On Earth, the news of the ruins moved through the unified command. It did not cause fear, caused a deep, cold anger. The feeling that had begun with Kale's test hardened into certainty. The universe was not just empty and wild. It was a place where others hid and watched from the dark. Commander Tae-suk reviewed the data in his office. He looked at the image of the ancient beacon, aimed at his home like a camera. Hygiene sat across from him. "The Elder's warning," Hygiene said softly. "It wasn't just a Veltari law. It was a law someone else gave them. A lesson passed down. Do not disturb the humans. This thing in Proxima proves it. We were a specimen under glass for someone else, long ago." Tae-suk leaned back. "And Kale broke the glass. So now we're out. And everyone who ever read that old law is waiting to see what we do." "What do we do?" she asked. "We make our own law," he said. He pulled up a star map. Hundreds of systems glowed. Many had symbols next to them, data from listening to Veltari and other transmissions they had slowly learned to decode. Their law was to leave us alone. "Our law will be simpler. We will go where we please. And we will not hide." A new project began. Not a weapon, a statement. It was called Echo. The Odyssey returned to Seoul after 3 years away. It was not greeted as just an exploration ship. It was greeted as proof. The crew saw the changes. The ring around Earth was now thick with industry. New ships, bigger than the Odyssey, were taking shape. In a secure lab on Sentinel-1, Ji-hun and Sumin were shown the Echo project. It was a probe, but not a small one. It was a vessel the size of a small building, armored and powered by 3 step drives. "Its mission is simple," the project head explained. "It will go to the coordinates we have gathered for the 7 nearest species that are part of the galactic community. It will not enter their systems. It will stop at the edge. It will broadcast a message on all frequencies. Then it will step to the next location." "What is the message?" Sumin asked. They played it. It was Hygiene's voice, calm as ever, but the words were different. "This is humanity of soul. We are here. We are aware. We are mobile. We claim no space but our own. Observe us if you wish, but do not test us. Do not approach." The old caution was wise. Heed it. It ended with a data packet. It contained the complete record of the first incident. Kale's pulses, their response, the Veltari apology, everything. It was not a history. It was evidence for a trial where humanity was both victim and judge. "We are returning the warning," Tae-suk told his senior staff. "We are echoing it back to them. We are showing them that the specimen knows it was in a cage. And the cage is now open." The launch of the Echo probe was not secret. It was broadcast on public channels on Earth. People watched in bars, in homes, in public squares. There was no celebration. There was a quiet, grim understanding. This was their letter to the neighborhood. The probe tore its way into the dark point one by one. It appeared at the edges of alien systems. At the Veltari border, their sensors detected the violent arrival. They heard the message. They saw the data. They recognized their own ship, Kale's foolish act, played back to them as a case filed in the Concord Council. Elder Alara watched the message end. The final image was a simple star map with Sol highlighted. Not as a target, as a point of origin. "They are not asking for a place at the table," she said to the Silent Council. "They are nailing their own rules to the door. The caution was to protect us from them. Now they are cautioning us to protect ourselves. The lesson is complete." Other species received the same message. Some were angry. Some were afraid. All were surprised. No young species had ever acted this way. They did not ask for friendship or technology. They simply stated a fact of existence. "We are. You are. Do not make us problem for you." Kale, in his archive, heard about the Echo probe. He requested and was given the message to file away for history. He sat in the dim light and listened to Hygiene's voice. He saw the data of his own crime. He had wanted to be a teacher to humanity. He had wanted to show them the galaxy. Instead, he had been the lesson they learned from. And now they had become the teachers. Their first lesson to the galaxy was a review of his mistake. He closed the file. The archive was silent. He was the keeper of a truth he had disregarded. And now that truth was speaking for itself, in a calm, clear voice that traveled between the stars. It did not shout. It did not threaten. It simply stated what was. And in its simplicity, it was the most terrifying thing Kale had ever heard. The story had not ended with a war. It had not ended with friendship. It had become something else. A new constant. A fact of life. Humanity was awake. They were not conquering. They were existing loudly and visibly in a universe that had hoped they would stay quiet forever. And their very existence was the most profound warning of all.